The African sun blazed fiercely over Lagos during Christmas season. The city buzzed with noise and movement as people hurried through crowded streets beneath the dusty harmattan sky. Cold, dry wind carried fine dust through the air, while Christmas songs played from roadside shops alongside honking buses and noisy generators. Traders called for customers, children laughed excitedly, and the smell of suya, fried meat, and puff-puff filled the evening air. Despite the traffic and chaos, there was warmth everywhere. Constance Adeyemi stood beside her broken-down car, looking defeated. Lately, nothing in her personal life seemed to be working, especially her relationships. Well, not everything, she corrected herself. Her business was thriving, expanding steadily into international markets. But success and wealth had done little to quiet the growing emptiness in her heart. Pedestrians hurried past, glancing at her with mild interest. A few rough-looking men had approached her earlier, offering help. She had politely refused, telling them her mechanic was on the way. Earlier, she had called the repairman over 40 minutes ago and had been waiting ever since. The men now stood beneath a shed across the road, watching her, probably waiting for her to give up and call them instead. She dialed her repairman again. "I'm coming," he repeated. Somehow, Constance knew he was not coming. The traffic was terrible. Or perhaps he was working another job and simply did not want to tell her. From the corner of her eye, Constance noticed one of the rough-looking men walking toward her. Trying not to panic, she lifted her phone to her ear and pretended to be speaking to her imaginary husband. "My love, where are you?" she said casually, glancing back discreetly to see if the man was still following her. He was, and he was getting closer. Constance began walking toward the nearby estate, forcing herself to appear calm as she continued her fake conversation. "You're close by? All right, thank God," she said. Now the man was only a few steps away. As he opened his mouth to speak, Constance quickly raised a hand at him while keeping the phone pressed to her ear, pretending to remain deeply engaged in conversation. She was putting on a brave face, but her heart hammered violently in her chest. She needed help. Fast. Just then, a car coming from the direction of the estate slowed and stopped near them. Its sudden presence distracted everyone. By now, Constance was desperate, but still cautious. Whoever was inside the car, were they a rescuer or another threat? Then the driver's door opened, and the occupant stepped out. The man was tall and carried a commanding presence. Constance would never fully understand what pushed her that day. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the instant attraction she felt toward him. Or maybe it was the calm authority he carried so effortlessly. Before she could stop herself, she ran toward the stranger, wrapped her arms around him, and said breathlessly, "My love, finally you're here." Rory, the man who had just stepped out of the car, quickly assessed the situation and decided to play along. As a believer, a strange woman hugging him was highly inappropriate. But this woman was clearly distressed, and he had heard enough dangerous stories about this part of town. One glance at the rough-looking man standing nearby told him all he needed to know. Rory looked around and noticed several other men watching from across the road. "I'm sorry, dear. Something delayed me," he said calmly. But inwardly, his mind was racing. Was this the reason he had felt such a strong urge in his spirit to leave the house that evening? "Good evening," Rory said politely to the man. "Boss, good evening. You are the husband?" the man asked. Not wanting to lie, Rory simply smiled mildly. "Thank you for watching over her for me," he replied. Then he turned to Constance with a smile that made her heart skip unexpectedly. His tone was polite, appreciative, dismissive, and quietly authoritative all at once. Constance found herself strangely impressed by the way he handled the situation without aggression. The rough-looking man seemed disarmed by Rory's composure. After a brief pause, he stepped away and returned across the road to join the others. "What's wrong with your car?" Rory asked. "I don't know. It just stopped," Constance replied. Rory leaned slightly toward the engine while she tried starting the car again. The engine coughed weakly and died. "It seems your battery is dead," he said. "Let me use my battery to jumpstart yours." Constance watched him walk toward his car with long, confident strides. She studied him quietly. He was attractive. Very attractive. But the car he drove was a Toyota. Simple. Modest. Probably a civil servant, she concluded. One of those salary earners. But she could almost hear her mother's voice in her head. "You may miss your God-given husband by always finding fault with every man," her mother would often say. Still, this man was not up to her standards. Constance was wealthy, successful, and used to a certain class of men. She had no intention of marrying someone she believed would drain her financially. Soon, Rory drove his car closer and connected his battery cables to hers to revive the engine. As he worked, Constance observed him closely. There was something about him. A presence. Meanwhile, Rory noticed the woman beside him watching him intently. She was beautiful, but in a strangely lost way. Elegant. Sophisticated. The kind of woman who probably believed deeply in social class and status. Rory glanced across the road again. The rough-looking men were still there, watching them carefully. Between him and Constance, an undeniable attraction pulsed quietly in the air. 30 minutes later, her car finally came back to life. Rory disconnected the cables carefully and returned them to his car. "You should find out why your battery keeps running down," he said calmly. "All right. Thank you. My mechanic will handle that. I just need to get home and pick another car," Constance replied, unable to completely hide the pride in her voice. "All right, ma'am," Rory answered quietly, now noticing her tone more clearly. "She assumes I'm poor but intelligent," Rory thought inwardly. A moment later, Constance stepped closer and offered him some money. He refused gently. "I don't know why God led me out of the house this evening," he said softly. "Maybe it was for your sake. But I'll plead with you to return to your source." Before leaving, he gave her a brief, respectful hug and gestured toward her car. "You should go now. I'll wait here until you drive off safely." There was something deeply protective in the way he said it. Constance felt strangely unsettled. As she drove away, she glanced into her side mirror and saw him still standing there, watching to make sure she left safely. Back home, a realization struck her. This was the first time a man had protected her while expecting absolutely nothing in return. And she did not even know his name. Perhaps that was why she could not stop thinking about him. Christmas Eve came with the promise of hope and the blessing of the birth of the Savior of the world. Beneath the dusty Harmattan sky, the city glowed with lights, laughter, and the joyful reminder that unto mankind a child had been born. And the Grand Lagos Hotel, where the corporate gala hosted by the Association of Real Estate Developers was being held, glittered with wealth, influence, and prestige. Crystal chandeliers shone brightly above elegantly dressed guests as the sound of soft music, laughter, and business conversations filled the luxurious hall. Constance Adeyemi stood confidently on the stage, dressed in elegance and power, delivering a compelling speech about success, discipline, and the mindset required to win in life and business. The audience erupted into thunderous applause. She smiled gracefully, but the moment she stepped away from the spotlight, the emptiness returned. Later, seated alone at her reserved table, Constance pushed food around her plate absent-mindedly while soft Christmas worship music played in the background. Around her, people laughed with their families. Husbands sat beside wives. Children clung excitedly to their parents. Fiancés held hands with their future brides. Constance stared blankly ahead. Her phone vibrated again. Mom calling. She ignored it. She was already emotionally exhausted and did not want her mother asking whether she was finally bringing a man home for Christmas. For years, she had proudly played the role of the independent woman. "I don't need a man." That had always been her philosophy. But lately, she was no longer sure she believed it. The memory of the kind stranger who had helped her without demanding anything in return had stirred something unfamiliar inside her. A longing. A quiet ache. It became painfully obvious to her that night. She had everything except peace. Hours later, when she finally arrived home, she was surprised to find her mother sitting comfortably in the living room. Madame Favorite, a 60-year-old retired teacher with a warm face and observant eyes, smiled immediately when Constance walked in. "Mummy, you're here?" Constance asked, bending slightly to hug her. "Yes, my dear," Madame Favorite replied warmly. "It would not be nice for you to spend Christmas alone since husband has not yet come." Constance fought the urge to roll her eyes. Her mother was clearly trying not to mention marriage too directly. "And there is a night vigil to attend tonight," Madame Favorite added. "Mummy, I'm tired. I won't be able to attend," Constance said as she sank into the living room sofa and stretched wearily. One of the domestic staff quickly approached to collect her shoes and handbag. "I understand, my dear," her mother replied gently. "That is why you can rest for a while and attend the vigil later." Madame Favorite spoke softly as she placed a comforting hand over her daughter's. Constance looked at her mother and sighed deeply. She already knew she was not escaping Madame Favorite tonight. And somehow, without warning, her thoughts drifted back to the stranger again. The man who had pretended to be her husband just to rescue her from danger. The man whose name she still did not know. She found herself wishing he was around again to help her. "Be careful what you wish for," she whispered to herself, almost like a warning. Her mother persisted gently until Constance finally agreed to attend Christmas service. By 11:30 p.m., she found herself seated inside a Catholic church not far from her home. The atmosphere was quiet, reverent, almost piercing in its stillness. Then the sermon began. "What profits a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?" The words struck her harder than she expected. She shifted in her seat, unsettled. Was she that far gone? Was she so consumed by ambition and image that she had slowly drifted away from God? She used to pray. She used to be close to him. But somewhere along the way, the hunger faded. Parties replaced church services. Business meetings replaced Bible study. And once again, her thoughts drifted, uninvited, back to the kind stranger. Constance, stop. Weeks passed. After the new year, Constance arrived at O'Cross Holdings for a billion-dollar partnership pitch. She walked into the boardroom with confidence, dressed in power and precision. Then she froze. At the head of the table sat the man from a few days before Christmas last year. The kind stranger. Rory Daniels. As she later discovered. Only now everything was different. He wasn't just a helpful passerby. He was the owner of O'Cross Holdings. Powerful. Influential. Respected. The entire room subtly deferred to him, yet he carried himself with quiet humility. Constance forced herself to breathe and proceeded with the pitch. As she spoke, she noticed something shift in the room. The numbers impressed them. The structure impressed them. But Rory's expression remained measured, thoughtful. And then he spoke. "Profit without integrity destroys people," he said calmly. "You will remove the unethical aspects of this project and return with a revised proposal in 1 week." Silence filled the room. No one had ever spoken to Constance like that before. Not in business. Not in life. Except her mother. After the meeting, she approached him. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said softly, referring to the night he helped her with her car. Rory studied her for a moment. He was wondering again why God kept bringing her across his path. "It was nothing," he replied calmly. "I hope you've sorted out the issue with your battery." Constance gave a small, uneasy smile. She hadn't. But she couldn't tell him she now owned multiple cars. Not when she knew whom he was now. Rory didn't smile back. He only nodded, already shifting back into professional focus. "Let's discuss the revised proposal next week," he said. Yet as they stood there, something unspoken lingered between them. An attraction. Quiet. And unmistakable. A week later, Constance returned again with her revised pitch. This time, he accepted the pitch. O'Cross Holdings agreed to invest in a multi-billion-naira real estate project sited in Rivers State. Sunshine Estate was officially underway. Over the following months, Constance and Rory worked closely together. Due diligence, restructuring, negotiations, and site reviews. What began as a business partnership slowly became a rhythm neither of them could ignore. As they worked, Constance began to notice something she had never encountered in corporate spaces like this. Rory did not believe in shortcuts. Not in money. Not in decisions. Not in life. And more than anything, he took his Christian faith seriously. He never missed his Monday 5 p.m. prayer meeting. He never skipped Wednesday Bible study. And once a month, the entire company paused for corporate prayers. When Constance first learned about it, she had genuinely thought it was a joke. Who does that? What billionaire runs a prayer meeting inside a corporation? He must be extreme, she had muttered privately. A fanatic, she concluded. Yet the more she observed him, the more that judgment began to blur. Constance found herself talking about Rory more often than she intended. One evening, Madame Favorite visited her home and caught her mid-conversation about him. They were in the kitchen together. Madame Favorite never allowed the chef to cook whenever she was around. "I prefer my own cooking," she would always say, rolling up her sleeves. And inevitably, she dragged Constance into the kitchen too, no matter how exhausted she was. "So you think he is too churchy?" Madame Favorite asked while stirring the pot. "Mummy, how many billionaires attend ordinary Sunday service faithfully? And then this one even holds monthly company prayers," Constance replied. There was a pause. The kitchen filled with the soft bubbling of soup and the fading warmth of evening light slipping through the window. Cars passed outside. Life moved on. Madame Favorite finally spoke, her tone calm. "Maybe that is why God trusted him with that amount of wealth." Constance fell silent. Her mother had a way of saying things that stayed longer than comfort allowed. She slowly stirred the pot, avoiding eye contact. Because deep down, she knew her mother might be right. Rory was an enigma, and even more confusing than him was the way she felt around him. Usually, men like that turned her off completely. Too intense, too spiritual, too serious. But with Rory, something was different. She found herself wanting to understand him more, to know what lay beneath the calm authority and quiet conviction. Constance,